Hi everybody, this is Melissa Chambliss. I am with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. And today with me I have Christine Fisher.
Hi everybody.
Fisher.
That's right.
Who is actually a candidate for Cincinnati City School Board. So You're running for school board.
That's right.
Yeah, that's exciting. And so with me I also have Betsy, who's our lovely interpreter today. She's going it solo, so we're going to have to try and slow down our voices to make sure we don't wear our hands out.
Yeah, thank you.
So definitely appreciate you coming and helping us out today. So want to just take a few minutes to remind everybody how to ask a question. So if you are seeing this from our page, which is our public page live, you just comment on that and the question will come through and it'll come right here to me, and we'll stop what we're doing and we'll actually ask the question. If you're seeing this in one of the groups, because we do have a multitude of groups that share this, make sure that you click on the video. And when you click on the video, you should see a comment area. Most of you are probably very familiar with Facebook Live at this point, and you can just insert your comment there. We have somebody off screen who's actually going to type them up and feed them right here to Christine and I. So
you guys are really becoming experts in Facebook Live and candidate interviews.
Absolutely. I don't even know how many we've done total as a team, but we've learned a lot of tricks and tips, and so thanks for a lot of support from Nicole and her husband Sean, who do most of this back scene stuff that I would be lost without them, so it is great. And they're both off camera right now for those who are interested. So you look for other Q&A events, because we do have some more school board candidates and municipal judges that are going to be coming up. And we also have congressional candidates that we're currently lining up, state reps, and individuals who are running for governor. So we'll have our first one of those coming at the beginning of July. So we're really excited about that.
It's great. It's a great way to get to know candidates in a really approachable, easy way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of approachable, we're in your home. So
yes, welcome.
Much more approachable than that. So invite friends, tag people in there, and share this so that we can get some additional traction on these and educate ourselves to make sure we know who we're voting for. And then you can also follow us on Twitter at TWWSWOH. So TWWSWOH. Also wanted to just do a quick plug for some upcoming Sam DeVoe actions and events that we have going on. We have regular picketing starting tomorrow from 11 to 1 outside of Joe Dieter's office to demand a retrial. A link to sign up for shifts is actually on the Black Lives Matter Cincinnati Facebook page, and they're in their events listing itself. So they have events on July 4th, event at Northside, 4th of July parade. July 7th, they're also having a rally and a march. And then for more information, make sure that you visit the Black Lives Matter Cincinnati Facebook page and the Countdown to Conviction event on the Facebook page. So appreciate you all allowing us
thanks for sharing that.
Do that little plug there. So and I know that Nicole Klingel, for those of you who are in our group, has also posted that in our group. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of information on where to find additional information on Christine, and we'll kind of give a quick introduction for you and then let you add anything that you want. And then we'll get straight to the questions. So I think we should be good. We should be up in most of the groups. So you can check out her website at Vote Christine Fisher, and it's FISHER.
That's right.
.com, and I'm sure Sean will put that in the comments also. And then her Facebook page is Vote Christine Fisher. Yep. So you can check out her Facebook page also. And she is a member of a lot of our groups. So I'll just highlight just a little bit. Christine Fisher, both of her parents were actually professors. So what did they?
Yes, my father was a professor of education, and my mother was a professor of business.
Oh, okay.
And so my two interests are education and business.
And where did
funnily
they teach?
Enough. Before they retired, they taught at Concordia University in Canada.
Okay, nice. She also attended a STEM-focused public school. You have a degree in computer engineering from Queen's University. And in college, Christine was very involved in student government and education policy. She was the student president in her senior year, led policy efforts across multiple universities, and brought education policy to the state and federal government. Additionally, she lobbied the state government in relation to tuition and university funding to try and get that improved. So, after graduation, Christine was hired as a finance manager for P&G, and you currently live in Mount Lookout.
That's right. That's where we are tonight.
Husband and 2 small sons who are adorable. They were eating dinner when I got here, so they were super cute.
We've sent them out for ice cream, so we should have a quiet household for at least the hour that we need to chat.
Yeah, well, we'll see. If life interrupts, that's fine.
Yeah.
So not a problem. So anything you want to add to that you feel like it'd be great for people to know about you?
Yeah, so I've been at P&G for 12 years, since 2005, and had a wide variety of roles since then, from being a brand finance leader on a few different businesses to being the profit forecaster for our largest business in the company, which is Tide and Downy in the fabric care world. And then I got some experience in facilities and real estate and was the global finance manager for all of our sites around the world, which was a really interesting opportunity for me to get to know about different countries. And I had employees who worked for me who resided in different countries around the world. And so learning how we operate all of those and how we do capacity planning was a really interesting opportunity. I've then had a couple of kids, and so took a little bit of time from work to do that and spend time with each of them. And then most recently I've spent time in what we call family care. Most of you would know that as Charmin, Bounty, and Puffs, so our paper products that we sell. So I'm currently the finance leader for Charmin and Puffs, which is about a $2.5 billion business that we manage the day-to-day operations of.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So I think we'll get started with general questions. Again, if you have questions, please just put it in the comments of the video. We'll stop with our flow of questions to make sure that we capture everybody. It's important that we, engage with the audience and get them into this process. So we'll start off with just some general questions. I guess one of the things that and most of these questions, by the way, came from our group members. So we solicited them and they provided those questions. So one of the things that we really wanted to know is why do you want to be on the Board of Education? What motivates you for that?
Yeah, I'm doing a whole lot of work, and I'm trying to get elected so I could do a whole lot more work for a volunteer position. So some have said maybe I should focus on other hobbies, but education is really so important and so critical for all of our children. And as my kids are starting to get to that age where they're going to be entering schools, that's hit home even more about the role that their school and their classmates will play in their lives and their teachers. And if we look broadly at the children of Cincinnati, almost half are living below the poverty line, which is just really shocking. And we think about the role that schools play in addressing that issue. Long-term, schools will hopefully make sure that people aren't living in poverty and will give people those opportunities to have a further education, have jobs or education coming out of our CPS schools. But in the short term, it just means that every day we have students showing up to school who have a lot of needs other than just being educated. And that's very challenging for the district to be able to address. So as I look at the state of the schools and where we are as a community, I really think that it's time for lots of people to get involved, and I think that this is a really good way that I can provide service and help the schools.
Okay, great. It's good just to give everybody some insight into kind of what motivates you, what's driving you, although I could see those 2 cute little boys at the dinner table and kind of got a sense of probably a passion of what's motivating you. So what are the top challenges you feel that are facing the district, and what role will you take in kind of helping resolve those? And I think you mentioned some of that.
Yeah, so one is, the population that we're educating comes with a lot of challenges, and that puts a lot of pressure on the schools to do more than educate. 80% of Cincinnati public school children qualify for free or reduced lunch. It means one of the roles of our schools is to feed kids. And so, I think making sure that we have all of our community centers working in the schools as best as we can, that we have resources brought in from other agencies as well as from the business community to help fulfill all of those needs outside of education, so that our teachers can focus on teaching when they're in the classroom and students are ready to focus on learning when they're in the classroom. So that's a big one, is just making sure that we supplement the resources of the schools with outside agencies and support to be able to address some of those issues. So another one is financial. We know that over the last, I believe it's 5 years, the state has cut over $70 million of funding to Cincinnati Public School. Wow. We know that with Kasich and with Trump and with Betsy DeVos, we're not going to probably see that change in the near future. And so our schools are having to rely more and more on the local public and the property tax levies to be able to support their funding. Right now it's about 50-50 of per student state dollars that come, and then all of the property tax dollars that fund the school. That reliance on property tax dollars means that we're having to go out to the public almost yearly and ask for levy renewals. And the public needs to know where and how the money is being spent. It's complex. Even just describing that financial structure is complex. I hope I didn't put anyone to sleep, or if you have kids, maybe that was a good bedtime story. But having someone who can explain the numbers and how they're being spent, where is funding coming from, what are some of the challenges with our finances, that transparency is something that I really want to bring to the board and the district, and with my background, I think that I'd be well suited to do it.
Yeah, because your background as finance leader, very complicated finance situations and leadership roles that you've had.
Yeah, even though P&G is a Fortune 50 company with a lot of bright people, there's still a lot of people there who don't understand the numbers that well, and you have to break things down in simple terms and explain, complex accounting to some of the senior leaders. And I've had a lot of experience doing that I think can apply to being able to explain how the school district's fundings are going to community councils, to PTOs, and to LSCMCs. So my final priority, I think you asked for 3, so I'll try to do that, is collaboration. So the district has to work with all sorts of different agencies as well as the business community, also the neighborhoods. When we have great schools that are in great neighborhoods with great community involvement, we really see things working together. We also have the preschool promise, which the city of Cincinnati was, I'm so impressed that everyone got together to be able to improve that. We have such an opportunity to be able to change the lives of our children in this city by implementing that successfully. But it's not going to be easy. And the structure that we have in place between the United Way, the agencies, Cincinnati Public Schools, all trying to work together to be able to address serving preschool up to all of the children in Cincinnati is going to be complicated, and they don't have a lot of time to get it right. So it's coming back for a renewal in 5 years, and while the public was really generous in approving it, I don't think that they'll have a lot of patience to see the success of it. So we have to get that right, and we have to get that right quickly.
Okay. We already have some questions from some of our members of the audience, so I'm going to kind of segue over here just really quick, and we'll try and make sure we take them out if they come up later in the normal questions that we have. So what do you think about public preschool only lasting 2 to 3 hours a day with an expensive extended day option, and how do you think that caters to working parents and low-income parents?
Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, I'm in a 2 working parent family, and how we manage childcare is a day-to-day struggle of who's dropping the kids off, when are we picking them up. Even tonight, a rush to get them home, dinner came in just at the end of it, because working a full day isn't 9 to 3 anymore. It's really, for parents, an extended day that our schools don't meet the needs for even the elementary and high school, let alone for preschool. The fact is that preschool education is expensive. a big part of that is the ratios that they have to have. You have to have very few students to teachers in a classroom just because of the needs of that age group. And so with those requirements and the requirements to make sure that those are high quality educators who have associate or undergraduate degrees, means that you have a lot of expenses in your overhead for your teaching staff to be able to provide that care. So I know that we've also heard from some parents who don't want their kids in school all day long at that young of an age. So it's a real balance between meeting the needs of what the child is looking for in terms of preschool education and what will serve them well as what will provide for working parents. But I know that a 2 to 3 hour preschool class is not going to help working parents get to work, but hopefully it will help preschool children get more ready for kindergarten and be more successful in the long term.
Mm-hmm. So I think, what do you think about some of the possible solutions to address the needs for those, well, I mean, even low income or working, right? You can't necessarily take off after 2 hours to go pick up your kid and take them to maybe a daycare that you could afford. Is the city, or has there been discussions around any creative solutions for that?
No, I haven't been aware of any. I know that everybody realizes that childcare, and this isn't just a problem in Cincinnati, but really across the country, is becoming very difficult for parents to balance that and working environments. And I think it'd be great to see more of a national solution as well, to if there's more we can do from a tax credit support system. I know right now the tax credits max out for most working parents. I know for our family it maxes out at $5,000, which does not cover a whole lot for 2 kids in full-time daycare all year long.
Right.
And so I think that if our city and if school districts can work more with other government agencies, if we could get more of a public system in place to be able to help support childcare across the board, that we would be better suited. Now, I do want to separate out childcare from preschool because they are serving 2 separate needs. Both are very important. The preschool promise was really trying to focus more on the preschool element and the kindergarten readiness element of making sure that the kids that are getting into kindergarten are prepared and have had some education outside of the home to be able to bring them up to speed with what people are asking them to be ready for in kindergarten.
Okay. So I'm going to segue to another question here from one of the members, is what do you think about preschool being taken out of local neighborhood schools and moved to 3 centralized locations? How does this serve neighborhood families?
I think you have to really balance the capacity of the schools, and some of our neighborhood schools are over capacity, and so serving the needs of the neighborhood for K through 6 is also important. So part of the decision to centralize some of the preschool was due to capacity issues in some of the schools. The problem it creates, though, is transportation. So the district can't provide transportation for that age group because of state regulations of what would be required, and it just would not be able to be feasible for the district to provide transportation. And so now we're putting even more of a burden on parents to be able to get their kids to these locations. I'm worried that it's not going to be a solution for all. Now, Preschool Promise is getting dollars not only to expand Cincinnati public school spots, but also to local agencies. So I hope that maybe those can fill more of the void in the neighborhoods where CPS has had to centralize.
So something like a private entity?
Yeah, so the YMCA is one example of an agency that would qualify for those dollars. So the preschool dollars are going to follow the student. And so as long as it qualifies as a 4 or 5 star rated by Step Up to Quality standards, then dollars can flow with those students to wherever they're going for preschool.
Okay. All right. Great questions. Thanks.
Yeah.
So keep it up. If you have other questions, make sure
Thank
you ask those in the video feed. So we'll kind of go back to some of our general questions now.
Okay.
And again, we'll stop as soon as you guys have questions out there. So we talked about your top priorities. And so I think you kind of listed those in your 3 kind of top priorities just a few minutes ago. And so one of the other things is that one of the questions that we have is, what was the biggest change or improvement you initiated in a previous position, and which specific duties did you face? So I don't know if you want to take that from your, your employment, or if you have volunteer opportunities that you've done, or things like that. Happy to share whatever.
Yeah, so the example I wanted to share, because I think it applies a little bit to some of the challenges that Cincinnati Public School has faced and might face in the future, is when I was the finance leader for all of our facilities and real estate at Procter & Gamble across the world, we were actually at a point where we were declining enrollment, reducing the number of employees in some of our established countries while we were growing in some of our developing countries. So we were having to build new spaces where we were having growth while we were having a lot of vacancy and a high vacancy rate in our office spaces, for an example, here in Cincinnati. And so we developed a plan to be able to, a long-term plan that over a 10-year period, we would be able to better forecast out where do we think employees are going to be, where is going to be the business need to have employees in all of our sites around the world, and then what facilities needs are going to be there to require that. Are they going to need lab space? Are they going to need office space? How do we design that to be better suited to a millennial employee versus some of our older population? What is work going to look like in the future? We might not all have a corner office. P&G's moved away from corner offices a long time ago, but how do we think innovatively about how we use that space? And we came up with a long-term 10-year plan that they're well on their way to fulfilling, and it's really been able to optimize the spending so that we were able to save costs where we could and invest them in places where we were growing. This applies pretty relevantly to the district. So they went through a big period of a facilities master plan and development of new schools, and our schools overall are in really good shape from a facilities standpoint. But a few years ago, they were forecasting that enrollment would be going down to 25,000 students. It's now up to 35,000 students. Oh,
wow. That's a big miss.
Yeah, now there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think that some of my experience can help look at demographics, property taxes, where are families moving. We can look at birth rates. How do other districts do this and forecast it out? I mean, part of it is demographic shifts. So as younger families are moving into the city core and staying in the city core, it used to be that once you had kids, you moved out to the suburbs and you went to Anderson or you went up to Mason. And now a lot of people, in particular in my generation, we want to stay in more urban environments and we want to send our kids to public schools. And that shift is great for the school district to have an increasing population, but it's going to come with a need for us to be looking very carefully at forecasting where do we think those seats are going to be needed and how can we make sure that we're anticipating that with enough time to be able to get schools where they need to be.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, I'm going to move into another section. Sorry, I'm messing up this MacBook here. I'm not a MacBook person. Nicole's off on the sidelines laughing at me. Give me a Dell. What's this? All right. So, what was your role? What has your role been in selecting, hiring, evaluating, and dismissing faculty and staff, or making recommendations for those who are responsible for kind of dismissing faculty or staff? And what tools or methods will you use to ensure, kind of due diligence in the process?
Well, I think one thing is important to know that from everything I understand, the school board only hires two people, and that's the superintendent and the treasurer. Superintendent, we just went through a hiring search for a new superintendent, and so in the next term of the board members, we won't be going through that again. I don't recall where we are in the treasurer's tenure, but those are the only two direct people that the board oversees from an employment standpoint. I have a background, about half of my career I have managed people, and as I mentioned in my introduction, in a few of those roles I even had to manage people who didn't live in the same country as me, who were in different time zones. At one point I had 3 people who were working for me from Singapore, And so I was on the phone with them at 9 o'clock at night, so it was their time zone, and we could have discussions there. And I've been able to hire people within our company and our company's interviewing process who, I always want to find people who have a drive for success and have a passion for what they're doing. And you can usually tell that when you're interviewing people about, are they driven? Are they going to be hungry for growth in this role and dedicating themselves to it? And I think that if people have passion, they're usually successful in what they're doing. Of course, you want to make sure you have the due diligence of people's backgrounds and what have previous employers said about them. But one thing I always look for in my hiring decisions is that passion as well.
Okay. All right. And then I guess maybe the question was asked because I wasn't aware of what the involvement of the school board was. So that's interesting and educational for me as far as what, responsibilities you had, who you hired and who you didn't.
Yeah.
Right? So how would you successfully work with unions? And is there anything you'd like to change about how Cincinnati Public School works with them?
Yeah, I think overall, in particular the CFT, the teachers union, and the district have worked fairly successfully together, and they just finished up a contract, which I'm sure came with its own challenges, but so far from what I've seen, it's been a fairly positive working relationship between the two organizations. And I also saw, incredible collaboration between the teachers union and even the business community in supporting and getting behind issue 44 and passing both the tax levy for increased funds for the school district and for the preschool promise. I come from a background of union supporters, so my grandfather worked in iron mines in northern Michigan and helped to really implement the unions in the mine a long time ago. And my father was a union president of his faculty at his university. So I learned a lot growing up about the important role that unions can play. And especially when everybody is in it for the same reason and we're focused on the same goals. And I think in general, when we're working with people who might be initially on different sides, that's what we have to focus on, is what can we agree on and the outcome, and keep coming back to that. So particular for the school district, teachers, anyone who works in a school cares about the students. And if you can always bring it back to what is important for our students, I've seen great success of people really focusing on that and getting some of the other things out of the way.
Okay. Great. So we have another question here from the chat. So what's your opinion on charter schools?
So first thing I'd say is that, again, the school board does not decide whether Ohio can have charter schools or not. So that is more of a state legislation issue. The number one thing that the school board can do to address some of the issues that charter schools create for the district is improve our own schools so students and parents choose them. Because what's happening right now is that a lot of parents and families are choosing charter schools that, by the data, would say that they're not very successful. In Ohio, we've seen very few success stories from charter schools. Now, around the country, there might be pockets of success. People often cite some of the KIPP schools that you see out on the East Coast. But in Ohio, with very little oversight and not the same requirements on reporting or accountability, they don't have elected school boards. We've seen them be quite wasteful of dollars and not producing good outcomes for students. So because I can't change that as a school board member, whether we have charter schools or not, what I can focus on is trying to improve our own schools so that parents are making those choices. And educating parents as well about some of the quality differences that can be there. Because parents are always going to put their kid first and try to be making their best decision for the education of their child. And they're not choosing charter schools because they think they're bad. They're choosing charter schools because they think that they're better than the public option that they have. So I think education as well as actual improvements in our schools are going to really help the district to address some of the issues related to charter schools.
Okay, great, thanks. I was going to say, I know you can't do anything about it, but how do you feel? But I think how you felt came out in your answer overall, so I think we're good there. All right, so how would you communicate with all your stakeholders?
Yeah, so communication, I think, is a common theme amongst a lot of the school board candidates, because most people are seeing that that's an issue that the board could use some improvement on. As I've been meeting with people across various communities, trust and communication have come up a lot. There's been some missteps in communication from the district to the public recently, and I think we have a long way to overcome to get back to a place where the community can really trust the district again. And so I think one thing is that school board members have to be out in the community. So as we're running for school board, we're out speaking to community councils and neighborhood meetings and going to festivals and doing Facebook Live events. But then we go away for 4 years and have board meetings once every 2 weeks in one location at times that aren't necessarily convenient for parents. That's been a little unfair. I know there's other meetings and opportunities, but I think that we have to be out in the public a lot more and going to where people are versus asking them to come to where we are. So in particular, one of the things I want to implement in the first few months of my term is getting out to all of the community councils and having conversations about the finances of the district and the board to try to educate more about where the money is being spent. And that'll open up a dialogue so that we can then start hearing what issues community members are really concerned about and interested in.
Right.
I'd love to see more of a social media presence as well, in particular when it comes to decision-making opportunities. So how do we make sure that when big decisions are coming up to the board, we're really getting that message out and clear to the public?
Yeah, and there probably is a role that social media could take in something along those lines. We see a ton of activism and action on Facebook and on other social media platforms. So how can they connect with the school board that way to become educated around what's going on and what's the decisions being made? And
it's multiple tools, right? So social media isn't going to be for everyone.
No, absolutely.
But going to a neighborhood council meeting isn't going to be for everyone. Right. So trying to reach people where they are, whether that's online, in a park, at a community council meeting.
Right.
That's what we have to be out trying to do.
Some of those working parents don't have time to go to a community council meeting.
Exactly. But, I know a lot of us moms are on Facebook, so it's a good way to reach out to us.
Yeah, good way to show off pictures of your kids too,
yes.
right? Yeah. All right, so as a leader within the district, you oftentimes have to build, support for goals, projects, that type of thing that you're working on and this support needs to come from people who do not report to you. So you don't have any direct authority over all of these parents that you're going to need to influence. How are you going to go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think I touched on this a little bit in one of my previous answers, but it comes down to really understanding everyone's goals and everyone's motivations and trying to connect your aim and what you're trying to accomplish to their goals and what they're trying to accomplish. Because when you can find that mutual ground, that's when everybody's very excited to get together and will be motivated to help accomplish your goal if they can see how it helps them accomplish theirs.
Have you had any situations in the past in which you've had to do just that, whether through a volunteer or work or any kind of situation?
Yeah, well, I've had a number of scenarios at work where we work with multifunctional teams, people in marketing, people in sales, people in finance, people in research and development, and you don't have the same line reporting up to everyone. And so those people don't directly report to me or work for me. I can't direct them what to do, but we have to all work together to accomplish the same goals. Again, where I've seen the most success is where we have that clear vision stated up front so that everybody's working towards the same direction. And then you don't need authority to be able to get people to help support you. You need collaboration and cooperation amongst them.
Okay, great. So we're going to kind of segue now into kind of working with students. So one of the things that came out of the group is ensuring that all children get the services that they need, right? So with such a large spectrum of learning abilities, from gifted to talented students to IEPs, so the individual education plans that some students have with their education, what will you do to ensure that all kids in our district get the education needs met?
Yeah, so I think the district putting equity at the center of their decision making, they've sort of shifted their focus over the last several years to try to do that and really focus on equity. And that means not the same for everyone or every child or every school, but it means trying to address the needs of everyone so that we have a fair and level playing field for all involved. So I think that it's making sure that we have those opportunities for all of our students, whether it's their income level or whether it's some of their educational background or some of their ability background. Having different programs for different children is going to be really important. I've been impressed with some of the efforts the board has made in the gifted and talented areas over the last several years and identifying that that's a need gap. But we need to make sure that we're really addressing the needs of the IEPs as well. And I think sometimes communication falls down. You know, we put a lot of work and pressure on schools, principals, teachers. And when you have potentially multiple students with IEPs in the same classroom, we need to make sure that we have enough support around that teacher to be able to really implement those programs effectively. Mm-hmm. Again, more comes back to communication and engagement with parents of letting them know what is out there. So not all parents know what different programs the district offers and what services could be available to their children. So I think communication again comes back to it, is making sure that parents can be advocates for their children. They can't advocate for something they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I years ago worked in early childhood education, so working with at-risk kids for a developmental delay or something like that. And that was one of the biggest struggles, is for parents to figure out in the system, right, what is my child eligible for? What could my child qualify for? What services should I be asking for? And education is a key part of that, because when you have a young child who perhaps has a developmental disability or a delay, you want all the best for them so that you can get them up to speed.
Yeah, and we do have services to really address, a full spectrum of needs for children, but sometimes parents don't have the knowledge or the tools to be able to have that. And so I think better communication, and I've also talked about this in terms of other parental involvement areas, but if we can see about having where we have pockets of success, where we have great PTOs or great parent involvement, how we can partner them with schools or districts or areas of our district where we don't have as much. And so that we have those partnerships and mentorship programs between schools and between parent organizations.
Right. Even maybe a parent-to-parent mentorship, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of join someone who has experienced that with someone who's just now starting that journey of trying to figure out services for their child. That's going to be a scary situation. All right, so student to teacher ratio. So that's some questions on this particular topic. And what and where is the lowest student to teacher ratio in the Cincinnati public school, and where is the highest? And then what will we do to kind of lower the student to teacher ratio?
Yeah, so a lot of the student to teacher ratio is mandated within either the teacher's contract or within state minimums that are set. The teacher's
contract as far as the union?
Yeah, the teacher's union contract mandates the maximum number of students, and that also has to abide by state laws. In particular, we talked about preschool having some different requirements. But also enrollment of the school plays a factor in that. So sometimes we have really low teacher ratio, not because that's an active choice, but we just don't have as many students at that school, or we weren't prepared at the beginning of the year to know how many students were coming in. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it's hard for the district to know where students are going to be on the first day. Because they're a public school, a parent can show up on day 1, they could show up on day 30, on day 120, and if they live in the school district, the public school in their neighborhood has to take them. And so how you do that planning can be really difficult. So you could have mid-year changes in some of those ratios as well. I think what the more important question to be really thinking about is, how do we ensure that we have more line of sight to where students are going to be in what schools, and get some better balance between those. We have some schools that are way over capacity, then we have some schools that are way under capacity, and some of those are really our neighborhood schools and some of our neighborhoods that aren't thriving as much in our city. And finding ways where we can increase neighborhood enrollment at those schools, such as Frederick Douglass, I think could help to address the issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. So some of us have seen firsthand the damage that an unfair dress code can do, in particular to girls' self-confidence and self-esteem, especially in those middle school kind of ages, and even younger, quite candidly. So what will you do to ensure kind of like a gender equal dress code?
Yeah, this is a pretty complicated issue, because on one hand you want to ensure a level of decorum and respectability within a school system, but on the other side we've seen examples where it's really just been used to hinder girls and unfairly put pressure on them about concerns over what they look like and what they're wearing, and objectifying them versus protecting them, which I think was some of the original intent. And it's been amazing to see the evolution of public response to dress codes over this time period, where we've realized dress codes really aren't protecting girls, they're really hurting girls. And so I think a lot of it comes down to individual relationships, and I'd like to leave policy more to individual schools and classrooms, one-on-one relationships versus having a district-wide or a school, a total system dress code or policy, because I think that's where people can get too restrictive on how they're enforcing it. And that's where some of the problems have come into play. So I would like us to move away from restrictive dress codes, because it can cause more problems than it helps.
Okay. I'm going to go back. We have another question from the audience. So do Cincinnati public funds currently go to charter schools? So we're going back to the charter school discussion. And if so, what can be done to ensure public funds go to public schools only?
Yeah, so charter schools are technically public schools. So when I explained the funding system at the beginning, of half of our dollars for our school district come on a per student basis and half come from the property tax levy. That state funds of the per student basis follows the student out to charter schools. And what's even more shocking about it than that is that there's not a great records check process to ensure that the students the charter schools are claiming are really actually going to those schools, and they really were actually Cincinnati public school students to begin with. There's also complications of attendance day. So I believe that it's October 1st where the state says, okay, who has what students? Where are they? And charter schools will claim they have these students, and Cincinnati public school claims they have these students. And if there are changes after that, the dollars don't catch up until the next year. And we've seen it happen from certain charter schools in particular, where after attendance day, there's a shift in attendance back to public schools and back to our CPS schools. We also see it happen after sort of the Christmas holiday break, that parents start to reevaluate their choice and realize that maybe their public school option was the best one. So I go back to what I said earlier, is I can't change state law, but I can do two things. One is work to improve our schools so that parents aren't making that choice to begin with. I think that's the number one focus area for our board. The other is to work with systems and tools and processes, and some of these will need interaction with the state, on making sure that when dollars are leaving our school district for a charter school, that it is the right record and the right dollars to be flowing to the right student, versus right now we don't have a good way of tracking that. So I think some of my financial systems and tools background can help the district improve there.
Okay. So I think we probably have maybe like 10, 15 minutes left. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the other questions that we have. So how will you handle sexual harassment, assault issues in schools among students and teachers?
Yeah. So our culture right now, has been one to allow some of this to occur. And I'm not just talking about a culture within CPS. I don't know enough about the specific culture there to address it, but the broader culture has somewhat enabled everyone to be okay with a certain level of sexual harassment and sexual assault going on. You'll see and hear the term rape culture thrown around, but we see it in everyday interactions. As a woman growing up, we have those all the time. I think every woman can cite a case where they're walking down the street and have been catcalled at. And it's been accepted generally. And we need to change that culture. So one, I think we need to do a better job of educating and implementing in our schools more empathy education and programs that really talk about consent and talk about holistic relationships and healthy relationships. So that's somewhat in the prevention camp though. Once something has happened, then we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the victim primarily, and that includes privacy. The second item is that we're addressing the person who committed the assault or the harassment in an appropriate way. And whether that's legal measures or whether that's remediation measures, depending on the age and the situation of what actually occurred, I think both could be paths that we would take. But after a situation would occur, I think those are we need to make sure that we're taking care of the victim, informing the victim's parents, and then managing the person who committed the assault.
Okay. So what will you do to ensure successful collaboration on budget creation?
Love budget.
I know. I was about to say, this is like right up your alley, right? The finance.
You left out on my bio, like my hobbies include spreadsheets. But, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about collaboration on the budget creation and adherence to it. And is there anything that you'd like to change about kind of the current budget process?
I think one thing I'd like to see is more input from schools themselves and from local communities about where they see more needs, and making sure that have more of an equity focus versus an equality focus of getting dollars where they're needed versus really, a pure mathematical everyone has exactly the same pennies, because each school has different needs and we should be addressing those. So more input from the community in that process, but I think the bigger opportunity is more education coming out of the process, back to the public, back to parents. These are where your dollars are going. And that will help in the long term with collaboration of them understanding where their dollars are being spent to better support property tax levies in the future, because we know, unless we get an amazing governor in, which there's a few great candidates and I'm hopeful, that's likely not going to change the funding structure. And so as long as we're relying on this, we have to be out there collaborating with the community. So I talked about community and parents and schools, but teachers in the various unions. So we talked about CFT, but there's also AFSCME, which represents a lot of the service staff in the schools, janitors, as well as the cafeteria workers. We need to make sure that we're working with all of our union partners as well to make sure that their contractual needs are being met. It's the first thing. Two is that we're being proactive in needs that maybe weren't addressed in the last contract, but we have a time period between the different contracts. So what new things do we have to have on our line of sight to be able to address in upcoming contract negotiations?
Okay. Great. So I'm going to go to a question that was actually posed on sex ed, right? So Ohio has no kind of like model curriculum for sex education, which leaves the decisions up to kind of local districts. What are your thoughts around sex education and what we should have from an education standpoint in our school district?
Yeah, so I'd like to see a standard across the board, across our whole district, of what that sex education should look like. I think that it should not be a point-in-time education, that we should be incorporating it into our curriculum throughout the educational process. There are elements of sexual education that we can talking about with kindergarten and preschool students about what our body parts are, using the appropriate names for them, and that's a really important thing for young kids to know, is just be able to advocate for their own body. My 2-year-old likes to tell me, "It's my body. It's my body." Sometimes that's frustrating when I'm trying to, get him out of the car. But I appreciate that he's advocating for himself even at this age, and he has the language to be able to do that. As we go further in the age groups, I think that it's important to start having those conversations about what is consent. And that doesn't have to just be sexual consent, but that's consent in all aspects of the dating process or the interaction between students in any kind of physical manner. And incorporating all of this throughout is going to be more receptive the students are going to be more receptive to it versus, one point in time, if we had one course in high school that's related to sexual education. I don't think that that's the right way to do it. Now, I don't have a teaching degree and I'm not a curriculum expert, so my default would be to where do we have the best programs in the country on sexual education? What can we learn from other districts, other schools around the country to reapply to our own, and then work with the experts in curriculum development to try to come up with the right things. But I know that I'd really be asking those questions of those experts related to, should we be doing this throughout the process of their education, and how do we make sure that we have age-appropriate discussions from K through 12.
Okay.
We heard the dog, so that might be the timer.
Yeah, I know. I think that is the timer. So we are coming up to probably the last 5 minutes. So I'm just going to put a quick plug in. If you have a question, you need to submit it now. Otherwise, you can submit it afterwards, and hopefully you can get those and answer those on the site. So I guess I'll just ask you, we still have some other questions left, but I think it's important that you get the last word of what you want to make sure that we know about you and about your candidacy, and then we'll let your dog in. I just wanted to thank all of you for being able to do this tonight. It's such a great opportunity, and I love to see the passion that you all are bringing. This is, how you're getting involved and engaged, and I appreciate so much the opportunity to be able to share my message with everyone on Facebook, and you're enabling that. How I'm looking to get involved and engaged is really in a way that I think I can best serve right now, and that's through the school board, and bring my experience from the business community and my perspective as a parent to be able to improve our schools for all kids. I've been having fun on my campaign trail so far, but I am a first-time candidate, so I also want to take this opportunity to, if anybody has a passion out there and their way of wanting to get involved and engaged is helping on a campaign, reach out, let me know. We're always looking for people. Volunteers are welcome.
Yeah, we have a couple of parades coming up. I could use some help and support as a first-time candidate, a lot to learn, and so I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there's other avenues to get involved and engage. You don't necessarily have to be the person on camera or behind the camera, but there's various ways that people can engage with this process, whether it's my campaign or someone else's campaign. I think that this passion coming out of the last November election is important to harness and make sure that we're giving people those opportunities and knowing how they can help contribute.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So this has been great. So I appreciate Christine being here. Again, this is Melissa Chambliss. I'm with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. Hope you can check us out on Twitter at TWW SWOH. So TWW at Southwest Ohio, at least the acronym, Southwest Ohio. is follow us on Twitter. We have a lot of other candidates that we're lining up. In addition to school board, we have municipal judges. We also have congressional, along with state representatives and individuals who are running for governor next year. So you're probably seeing that Together We Will Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio is really focusing a lot more on the political, because we are focused on educating our members and anyone who's interested around which candidates are running, what their personal belief systems are, what they stand for, and we feel like it's important that in order for us to make real, lasting, sustainable change, voting is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So I hope you can tune in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.